seeing eye. And of course, Allison is the puppy raiser for us. Her dog Curly is in our program right now. But I thought I would say a few words about seeing eye and then give you a very quick tour of our property here, which is in the Whippany River headwaters, and tell you a little bit about what we do in terms of our land management here and at our breeding station, which is out in the Lamington River watershed. So let me start by saying, the CNI was founded in 1929, so we're in our 92nd year, and we were the pioneer and perhaps still best known of the guide dog schools in the world. But in our 92 years, we've produced about 17,600 partnerships between our specially trained seeing eye dogs and the blind handlers who come here to learn how to care for and work with the dogs and really journey forth together. Our mission really is to enhance the independence and dignity and self-confidence of people who are blind and visually impaired through the use of these specially trained dogs. And so I like to think of us really as empowering some very determined people who despite really physical limitations, are determined to use their abilities to really live their lives in their own driver's seat. And we drive vehicles with wheels, they drive vehicles with 4 paws. Right? And they're really enhancing their own mobility, thriving through the disruption in their lives. And we, through these unique partnerships, enable them to navigate the world more freely together with their canine partner and co-pilot. And the way we do that, I'm going to show a video that will speak volumes, so I'll be brief, but we select and breed and train the dogs for these special lives of service. And then we work with our extended family of over 500 volunteer puppy raisers who just really, do the labor of love to nurture these dogs through their puppyhood and give them the obedience skills, get them ready to become adult dogs who come into training. And they come here and for 4 months they train with our especially educated guide dog mobility instructors, and the dogs, then if they make the program, they're carefully matched with our blind owners who come and are learning here and living here on campus in residence for 3 to 4 weeks at a time. And then we support that partnership for the life of the partnership. So when someone leaves here with a dog, the dog might have a service life of 8 to 10 years. And then they may come back. So many of about 2/3 of our former students, our graduates, become students again. So we're kind of like a private school for adult education, where today's students are tomorrow's graduates are then the future students again. And we serve people from age 16 to 75. But actually, we have some people who are octogenarians or nonagenarians who are still working with their guide dogs. And when they leave here, they own the dog and they're responsible for its care. But we're there to assist them if they ever need us in their home community or to respond to a situation where they may need to refresh their skills or the dog's skills. A couple of questions I always get about what we've done during COVID. Well, we've adjusted our programs by reducing class size and practicing social distancing. And we really have been in limited operations mode since the beginning of the COVID pandemic. We never really fully shut down, although we did foster our dogs off campus for a period of a few months, and we cut back on our breeding so we wouldn't have a surplus of dogs. And then we started to bring the dogs back in July of 2020, refreshed their skills, the ones that had already been in training. And by August of 2020, we brought students back, and we have since then uninterrupted created more guide dog partnerships than any other organization in North America. So we're really honored to be here. We started when the CNI was founded. It was 2 years in Nashville, and then it moved to Whippany, and moved here in 1965 to Mars Township. And one thing people may or may not know is that in 2020, just before the pandemic, the governor of New Jersey and the legislature, both houses unanimously designated the seeing eye dog as New Jersey's state dog. So we're the home of the state dog. And we're a nonprofit, a 501c3 organization supported entirely by the generosity of individuals. It's interesting because when we opened our doors in 1929, the cost to create one seeing eye dog partnership was $450. And so we asked our students, because it's part of their independence, their dignity, to have some skin in the game. So they were asked to pay $150 tuition, a third of the cost. That's still the tuition they pay today. It's really a symbolic commitment on the part of the student, but we raise the difference. And today, it costs $71,000 to create one seeing eye dog partnership, from breeding, from selection to breeding, to raising, to training, to matching. But we're very proud of the fact that we don't cut corners. We have a beautiful facility, and our students really get the best of the best when they come here for our dogs. I do want to ask again, I want to thank Jeff Whippany and many of you met, giving us support tonight, and Sandy Moreta was here, giving us A&E support for this meeting. And we're all getting back in the game of doing live meetings. So this is a short video of our facility. And before I start, Jen, I'll just say, why don't we stop it for a minute, and I'll just orient folks. So this is Foster Fields up here, the County Educational and Historic Farm. And this is our property line. We have about 61 acres here, and you can't see all of the 61 acres, but there's some land we bought as buffer here, which is steep sloping land with a seasonal rivulet that flows into the Whippany Watershed. Washington Valley Road is down here. Across the road, we have a large open area, and then across Route 24, we also have about another 11 wooded acres that we retain as buffer. So altogether, we have about 61.7 acres here. We have 30 acres in woodland management plan, about 9.4 acres is farmed for hay. And so the impervious coverage you're looking at, which is almost all shown here, is about 10% of our site. And we are tied into the sewer system. That there's a trunk line that runs along here, and our waste is pumped up the hill, believe it or not, into the sewer system. We do a lot of work, we have dry wells and French drains around our facilities, and our most recent facility is the Dr. Robert H. Harris K-9 Pavilion, which was built in 2019, which is a real state-of-the-art K-9 Pavilion. So Jen, why don't we'll let it roll, and we'll see a little bit more of the site. As you go down the hill, we have a well, and we have a retention basin that provides retention and infill treatment. So it, of course, is designed to a 100-year storm, which we see every couple of weeks now. And it will, of course, allow for the collection of high volume runoff and then its infiltration across the road into the Whippany River bottomlands there. And that's pretty much it. It was a short video, drone footage from when we had that facility built. But I also want to say we have another facility out of Chester that supports our operation, and that's our breeding station. It's in Chester, Bedminster, and Peapack Gladstone. We have about 300 acres there, with frontage along the Peapack Brook, which is in the Lamington River, in the Raritan Basin, of course. And there we have a packaged treatment plant there. We collect and recycle gray water, and we're in the Highlands region as well, both the Highlands Preservation Zone and the Highland Planning Zone. So we really take our stewardship seriously. We have woodland management and farm land management, use abatement programs out there as well. So I wanted to say that about our work in watershed management, and we're here in beautiful Washington Valley, and everything you're looking at is in the Whippany watershed. So now really we have a treat for you, which is we had a promo made that we had hoped, and we still have some hope that we might get a Netflix or some other type of series made from, and it's called Eye of the Dog, and I want to show that to you because it'll tell you more about what we do than I could ever describe.
This is Kelly. She's a CNI dog, and it's the most unusual dog story we've ever chosen to present. Kelly, are you listening? Your story started on a farm in New Jersey, remember?
CNI is a very powerful place. Just a little bit of magic.
This is a dog guiding a human. Seeing Eye is the oldest guide dog school in the world.
Louis, come.
We're known as the gold standard.
Inu, right. Good boy.
It's challenging. Just 60% of our dogs actually make it through the program. If this were easy, we'd mail the dogs home to people.
There are over 200 dogs that are on campus at all times.
Each dog is different.
That's my buddy.
We have the goofies, the very serious workers.
Good girl.
We have just 4 months to train these amazing dogs, and there is a lot we need to cover. So the job is definitely intense.
We're equipped to handle anything that these dogs kind of throw at us. Good girl. This is Neely. Come here, Pauline. You're all done. We want these dogs to be the best of the best, so we've taken it to the next level.
Puppies. You can't beat that.
We can have as many as 100 puppies here.
Jesus Christ.
Every time you deal with newborns, it is stressful. Those are the ones that fade the quickest, and you have to be really on top of it. C-sections, of course, are always stressful, but you don't let the other people see you sweat.
How can you have a bad day if you have 4 cute puppies in your lap? You can't. The puppies will be 7 weeks old next week, and they will be leaving and going to their puppy races.
It's our raiser's job to show them the world as best they can. Some basic obedience.
Pretty girl.
When we first got Kendall, she stole our hearts. You, as the puppy raiser, it's a little stressful sometimes. She is predestined to be something awesome.
Happy birthday.
Okay, come here. When it's about 16 months, back to a seeing eye. And I knew all along that she was not staying with us forever. Sorry, no, I'm getting all Although we were all very sad, they are meant to do so much more than just be my pet. That's why you are able to let the dog go. Even though there's a part of your heart that doesn't want to.
The first step is introducing the basic commands.
We teach them how to pull to target door handles.
Then we start going into town,
Up the ante a little bit.
introducing traffic.
Then we'll have a midterm exam.
Under blindfold. This is the time when the dog needs to really have its A game on.
Hop up. Straight. Being very honest, it was scary.
Then we break away into what we call freelance. We try to introduce the dogs into as many situations as we possibly can.
Finally, we'll take them into New York City. And that's like the ultimate test.
The amount of pressure on them is immense.
Ranger, fold.
It's intense, and it's meant to be.
They can work there, they can work anywhere.
I think when I get my dog, I'm probably gonna cry.
Come time when they do get matched with a student, it's bittersweet.
The 4 months that we spend with them, we go through a lot with them.
Is she kissing you?
I know I want her, but I don't need her. And someone else needs her.
It's not just a job, you know? Sorry. To watch them meet their person and jump up on them and love on them and see how much that person is looking forward to that relationship, that's just like the best day. And I can't help but cry every time I do it.
That little slice of the seeing eye, I think we do, but we'll let you get on with your meeting, and I look forward to hearing the presentations tonight.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you. as a puppy raiser, I have a few little tears forming. After that video, I'd be remiss if I just didn't thank you for sharing that. It's a wonderful organization. I think what's important is that we're sort of co-marketing tonight, right? Because this is in such a beautiful place right here in our watershed, and I'm just lucky that I have a relationship with the CNI that we can meet in person for the first time in 18 months. So normally we would be meeting in our library, and we may be coming back because this is such a beautiful venue tonight. So thank you for allowing us to meet here in person. Before we get started, we do usually, for the record, just go around the table with introductions. So you just would say your name and your affiliation. If you are a representative appointed by your town, you can say your town representative. If you're here as a member of the public, that's great. We welcome you. And we'll start with Anne Marie Murray.
Yeah. I'm Mary Ellen Murray, and I represent Morris Township.
Thank you. Sorry, I got your name. That's okay. Mary Ellen.
I'm Stephen Janata. I'm the chair of the Whippany River Watershed Action Committee, and I'm also the liaison for Morris Township.
Allison Deeb. I'm the WORAC facilitator.
My name is Jason Duffler. I am a lifetime resident of Morris County, originally from Brookside and resident of Madison. And I'm really happy to meet everyone tonight.
I'm Jennifer O'Neill. I'm the administrator for WORAC, going on my 4th year, and I live in Boonton Township.
Michael Soliano. I'm from Parsippany.
I'm Judy Hernandez, representing Parsippany.
Dennis Diedrich, Hanover Township, and part of the Action Committee.
Fernanda Reisinger, and I'm from Cedar Knolls.
I'm Renee Jones. I'm from the Green Acres program. I'm very happy to be here.
Jamie Carpenter, also from the Green Acres program.
And I'm Bud Rabbits, liaison from Morris Township Committee.
And I think online we have Brad Turner. Okay, and then we have our speaker presentation today. We have 2 people from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, Renee Jones and Jamie Carpenter. And so they're going to talk about the Green Acres program. And without further ado, Renee and Jamie.
Thank you.
Well, what's a hard act to follow?
And so do you want us to use the mic, or what do you want us? Yes.
There's a handheld mic at the podium. If you wouldn't mind just pressing the mute button, which is also the power button, just press it down until it lights up.
Does everyone hear me?
Give it a minute.
Yep, you're on.
I'm on. Okay.
All right, so now, for some reason, my pointer is not cooperating.
And, share the screen.
Okay. So would you like to advance your slides, or would you like to do it? You can do it? Okay. Forward to that.
So as you know, my name is Renee Jones, and I work for the Green Acres program. I've actually worked there for, let me see, my daughter is 26. So I worked with Green Acres for 28 years. And it is just a great organization. And Jamie is my colleague. Jamie, how many years do you work?
Between blue and green, about 5
years. So we're going to give you an overview of the Green Acres program, and we're going to go into a little bit more detail of our local government and nonprofit programs and the state acquisition program. So this is the big news. Oh, wait, let's go back to the Green Acres program. We have just celebrated our 60th anniversary. So it was implemented in 1961, which is really an amazing tribute to how well that Green Acres has worked for many, many years. So we did a lot of events this past year for our anniversary and celebrated in a lot of parks that have been acquired. So what is the Green Acres program? Well, first off, we're part of the Department of Environmental Protection, and we're under the Natural and Historic Resources Program or Division. So we have, I often think of explaining Green Acres as the umbrella land preservation agency for the state of New Jersey, and we have different programs underneath it. So we are all about outdoor recreation and conservation, preservation of lands. There's a whole nother program, which is the Farmland Preservation Program, but that's different. So we're all about open space preservation and outdoor park development. And so I kind of, let's go to the next slide. The history of the Green Acres program. So we're established in 1961, and we were originally funded through a series of bond acts. I don't know if a lot of you remember, you go to the ballot and there'd be a question on, do you agree to fund through bond issues? And overwhelmingly, with every bond act, they were always approved, which is also a tribute to our program. And then in 1998, so the bonds, they weren't sustainable. So that's why we had to go back to the voters and ask them to pass referendums. And in 1998, we had the Garden State Preservation Trust Act, and that became our first commitment of a stable source of funding for a 10-year period. And so that got us to the next act, which was more recent, the Preserve New Jersey Act. That is now our permanent source of funding. And we are funded through the corporate business tax. And it's not just our program, it's the New Jersey Historic Trust, and it's also the Farmland Preservation Program for the Garden State Preservation Trust Act and the Preserve New Jersey Act. So under our preservation program, we have the State Land Acquisition Program, and that's where our office serves as a real estate agent, we often say. And we acquire land for our managers, which are the Division of Parks and Forestry, our State Park Service, the Division of Fish and Wildlife. We buy land for them. They become additions typically to the wildlife management areas. And then we also have our Natural Lands Trust Preserve. Under the State Land Acquisition Program, we have the Blue Acres Program, which is probably on a lot of people's minds with all the storms that we've had recently. And this is a program, it began before Superstorm Sandy. We were buying a lot of flood-prone areas up along the Passaic River in Wayne. And more recently, especially after Superstorm Sandy, we were really more instituted in terms of having a program, working and collecting and applying for federal money, federal grants, and of course there was a dedication of state funds. And the Blue Acres program is all about getting people out of the flood zone where their homes were substantially damaged. So it really was all about looking at areas throughout, flooded watersheds and buying them out, getting them out of harm's way. And, so we were only at that point with those funds buying lands that had structures, people were living there, and they had, I think, 50% or more substantial damage to their homes. And we also were looking at neighborhoods in, a cluster of neighborhoods that had a lot of significant damage. And part of what the Blue Acres program also did was work with the local governments, and that really became the key thing. So we entered into a lot of agreements, memorandum of understandings with the local governments, The state would buy the land, the state was the owner of the land, but we entered into an agreement with the municipality and they were the managers of the land. So it really became a really good relationship and partnerships with the local governments. Is there anything else to add? No? And the only other thing I meant to say this in the beginning is, you know, Jamie and I will each do our segments, but before I turn this over to Jamie, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We have our local assistance and nonprofit program, and that is by grants and loans to local governments, municipalities, counties, and nonprofit land conservancies. And Jamie's going to go into a little bit more detail with that. We have a tax exempt program. So for a lot of land conservancies that hold land for outdoor recreation and conservation purposes and provide public access, they can apply to be tax exempt. So that is a real benefit for a lot of the nonprofits, so they don't have to pay taxes. But the key is land for conservation purposes, and it must be open to the public. And then in our office, in our program, we have a Planning and Information Management Bureau. And that's kind of our technical review people. We have surveys that get reviewed and approved. We have preliminary assessments. Every properties provided must be clean. So we have professionals who do our environmental reviews. We have a mapping bureau. We also have appraisers, which added appraisers. There's a lot of the basis of all the properties that we acquire and our local governments and nonprofits acquire. It all circles around what is an appraised value of that property. And those properties get reviewed and approved by appraisers in our office. And then we have our Bureau of Legal Services and Stewardship, which we fondly call BLISS. And we're going to go into detail more about what their office does. So, uniquers. Why we preserve land and we develop outdoor recreation facilities for many, many reasons. We'll go, of course, natural resource protection and watershed protection, which is really important now. We're protecting threatened and endangered species throughout the state, Sussex to Cape May. And this is something that we're doing more of now, that it's really important that we want to get waterfront access to the public, because they have access to rivers for fishing, canoeing, kayaking. And we also provide funding for historic preservation. Another key thing that we're looking at more now, especially, is parklands in urban and regional centers. We're finding there right now, well, for many, many years, Greenacres has always tried to prioritize acquisitions and waterfront parks and urban areas and regional centers. That's that's been an important feature of our program. And outdoor recreation, basketball courts, baseball fields, tennis courts. This is our park development program. So under the state land acquisition program, I kind of went over this just briefly. When a landowner wants to sell their land to the state, they submit an application to our office. We only work with willing sellers. So we do not, at the state side, we do not do condemnation. And when the applications come in, we map them, and then they go to our agencies, the Division of Parks and Forestry, Fish and Wildlife, and Natural Lands Trust, and they tell us if they have an interest for us to pursue it. And when we have a yes, like we may have a property, let's see, we have a WAMA up here. There's the Black River WAMA, the Wildlife Management Area. So a property owner comes in, submits an application. It's adjacent to the Black River Wildlife Management Area. And the Division of Fish and Wildlife says, yes, we'd like you to pursue this acquisition. So what we do is we reach out to the owner, we introduce ourselves, and we begin our technical process. We order title, we order appraisals, and we also do an in-house preliminary assessment review. Because we want to make sure that the title is clear, that the property is clean. And when we get these documents back, then we begin our negotiations with the landowner. There may be, we go out to the property, we walk the property, we want to make sure there aren't, a large pile of tires on the property and other things. So we come back and we have an appraisal that's completed and certified. It gets certified to a market value, and with the tools of the title, the preliminary assessment, and the appraisal, that's kind of our beginning point to sit around the kitchen table, usually with a landowner, because we like to do face-to-face. Of course, this past year has not been face-to-face. It's been a little bit more difficult, but we sit down with the landowners and begin our negotiations to present an offer. And if they say yes, we put together the contract package. We have a legal team that guides us with our contracts. And if we send the contracts to the landowner, once they sign it, it comes back to us and we put together a closing package. And we now are a new owner of property as an addition to the wildlife management area. I mean, it sounds so simple. It's often very, very complex. So I don't mean to rush through it so much, but a lot of things we do, it's not always the state alone buying land. We often join into partnerships with the nonprofits and also with local governments to buy a piece of property. We all may go in together to try to buy that really important piece, because it might be really important not just to the state, but the county, to the local government, and to the nonprofit. So we do a lot of partnerships. But if the state money is in that project, the most important thing is it would become an addition to whatever that state facility is. So if it's a state park service land or the National Lands Trust. So we get involved with multiple contracts, working with all our partners as well. And then the Blue Acres program. And the Blue Acres program also is a willing seller program. But as I mentioned before, especially after storm events, and we're getting a lot of calls since last week. So many, not only landowners, but a lot of local governments have been asking us, what can I do? And so after the presentation, we can give you contact information in terms of people to talk to. If it's a local official who's interested in talking to someone in the Blue Acres office, we can give you that contact information. If there are residents that you know, then we can give you the phone number to call in the Green Acres program, because we're a partnership. The Blue Acres program, a lot of the people who work in Blue Acres work for Green Acres. So we're really one big program doing acquisitions. And then we have our local assistance program. And so the local acquisition program, we provide grants and loans to municipalities and counties. And then we have our grants to the nonprofit land conservancies. Now, and we have what we fund our acquisition of lands, park development, and stewardship projects. So there's 3 different types of funding for nonprofits and the local governments. The only thing I want to say about the nonprofits is they have to be a qualified nonprofit, a 501(c)(3). They have to have in their bylaws that they buy land. And there's other requirements that they must meet for the state of New Jersey. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the sign. When you see the sign, when you're driving around Morris County, what this sign means is the property that it's attached to is funded with our funds. What it means is we provided funding assistance to the local governments, the county, the town, or the nonprofit. So this isn't the nonprofit sign, but it's similar.
To understand.
A lot of times we get a call that people think the green acre signs mean, oh, it's state land and the state owns it. That's not the case. What it means is we provided funding assistance, we're like a bank, and we provide funding assistance to the local governments and the nonprofits to buy land. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jamie.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about the local program that gives grants and loans to the towns, county, nonprofits. So we've assigned variations of this sign too. So how do you get the monies in our grant and loan program? Just apply. We've got funding rounds just about every year, give or take. We just had a deadline a couple weeks ago. We've been reviewing applications like crazy. Do you remember what the total was? It was a couple.
Oh my gosh, it was in the hundreds, I think.
Yeah, do you remember the total now? It was like well over $1 million in requested funds.
Oh, yes, and we often have a huge amount of funding requests, but we only have a very limited pot of money. They're competitive grants, and we have to rank them and everything.
So we compare, we look at a lot of environmental justice, urban areas in particular. We need that green infrastructure, green space. We'll have our approvals soon for this past round. I think generally most who apply get approved, but we just don't have enough funding for everyone every time, but there's a good shot you'll get in. This is the front page of our application from 2 years ago. 2 rounds ago, rather. So as Renee said, we do a lot of partnerships. A lot of the projects that I manage on the local program are partnerships between towns and nonprofits or 2 separate nonprofits who go in. Maybe individually they don't have their own funds to acquire the land, but together they can, and then they get matches also on the side from other nonprofits I see. So there's lots of ways to juggle the money and make it affordable.
And it's another way that we also leverage funds, as Jamie said. One agency alone often doesn't have enough money to buy the property. So we leverage the funds with federal government, other state agencies, and county parks or county planning boards that often have an open space tax, like Morris County, I believe, does.
They just lowered it, yes.
Did they?
Yeah, it still exists, but it's below our threshold. But yeah, they've done years of so many acres of acquisitions. So our park development program, we have low interest loans. And then there's different percentages based on population. The urban areas, of course, are favored because we need more green in there. Similarly for land. Most of what we do are the 50% grants, the planning incentives. With those, you can have a whole slew of projects versus the 25% grants, the standard acquisitions. That's just like one property and done. Planning incentive, you have a project with us, you can add a new parcel every year and keep going until you're done. So it's a lot easier that way.
So I'll just add to the planning incentive grants that that came about, I want to say maybe 15 to 20 years ago. Originally, when local governments applied, they were applying for one acquisition, one application at a time. And now, or back 15 plus years ago, the decision was if the local government has an open space tax and an open space plan, then they qualify for a 50% grant, and they don't need to keep applying every year. And so with the new funding rounds, what they do is they just request, as long as they have an open space tax that is $100,
half cent per
$100 of assessed value. So they got to keep that threshold, plus have an open space plan. And most every municipality, the open space plan is part of their master, an element of their master plan. So a lot of municipalities already do this. So, it becomes a local decision for the local governments if they want to use and leverage their open space tax They can leverage funds from Morris County, and I'm not sure if Morris County provides grants to local governments.
I believe they do.
That they do.
They do.
And they do, and so those become matches for the municipality. They can get their money, you know, they get 50% from Green Acres, the other 50% comes from their local tax or Morris County. Or nonprofits, they can do fundraising for that acquisition. There's a lot of way to bring all the funding together.
And same for nonprofits, they can also have that funding incentive where they just, when a person you around, write a letter, say, "Hey, some more money, please." Keep going.
Also, another project, another type is a site specific. So the municipality has just an open space tax, but no plan. They are eligible to apply for a site specific acquisition. So because we didn't want to leave, we just wanted local governments to have different options. I'm working for a municipality, working with a municipality right now in Hunterdon County. And it's just a site specific, they don't have a plan, at least not one that they're have, I guess, all agreed upon, but they have a tax. And they're eligible for a 50% grant for this one particular property that they're applying for.
Usually the plans are work in progress at that point.
So as I'm talking, so I hope they can hear me out there.
So we've got some requirements for our projects. Has to be for recreation or conservation. You can acquire land via easement. Public access is a must. If you're 50% grant from us, or 25% or 75%, you need to find your match somehow, whether it's your open space tax or another partner. We cannot take land for affordable housing sites. That's come up a few times and we can't touch that. No measure compliance. Structures under certain circumstances, if they support outdoor recreation, they would be allowed. Sometimes historic structures, usually more of a case by case situation. And I didn't much get into tonight, but if anyone has a question, definitely.
My question is, so public access is required, I understand that, but if the property, for example, has high biodiversity values and you want to, the primary land stewardship goal is to protect, you know, ecological communities on that property, or the watershed or you know, riparian values, what type of management plan or restrictions are placed on that funding so that it would never become overdeveloped, you know, in terms of park facilities or park access, you know, that is structurally overdeveloped? Is there a mechanism to ensure that?
Well, in the Green Acres program in the beginning, some of the early programs did have environmentally sensitive grants. And those grants were had more restrictions for protection of resources. But we haven't had those more recently. And a lot of it is left up to the local government that has that property. And they may be buying it for preservation purposes, for the significant natural resources, or they're buying a property to put baseball fields right in. So it really becomes more of a local decision. A lot of times, I think what we say is we help provide the funding, but we do not get involved in how they're going to manage that land.
Such as the
Now, given that, I was saying one more thing. There have been some changes in our rules. So if there is a property out there, it's a wooded property, you know, 75% wooded, 25% open, and the town, you know, puts some fields, 25% open bush, and now they want to expand the wooded area. Well, our requirements, there's something called change in use, and there must be a public meeting, 2 public meetings, that they present this at a meeting, a public council meeting, to talk about their plan, have the public have their input in terms of you know, are they in favor, are they not in favor? And then a follow-up, because it really comes back to, we're not gonna tell the local governments what to do. What we are gonna require, this is public funds that they're using, you must have a public meeting to, you know, get that public input. And there's different ways to go about land acquisitions. So if a local government has a project that they are working with a nonprofit land conservancy, and they really see the value of preserving these really important resources, then they may want to think about, well, who is the best manager of that land? And so they can go into an agreement together to buy land, and then they can have a management and use agreement. This is what we see as the purpose and the mission for this new preserve in this local government. So we see that a lot. We see that a lot of partnerships. So, do you have a question?
Did you have any role in the Mount Kimball Glen Alpine Estate dealing a couple of months ago?
Personally, I didn't, but I know that parts of it were Green Acres funded. I was not part of it. I didn't know.
What was the outcome of that? Do you know?
Don't know.
There were some issues, right? I feel like I've heard that there were some issues.
So the building was dilapidated.
Yeah.
But it was a historic site and structure. And I know they had exhausted a lot of channels trying to get it to preserve it, but I don't know is that in our watershed? I don't believe so.
No.
Okay. I have a question about our watershed. Did your program have any involvement with the recent decision in Morristown for the open space in the Whippany River watershed on Lake Road?
Gosh.
I know Morristown had a stewardship diversion question with us, but I don't think it had anything to do with that. It was mostly by the recycling center. So I don't think that is.
We certainly can go back and ask. So when we get further down in the slides,
okay,
we're going to talk about the Bureau of Legal Services and Stewardship, because once a local government and a nonprofit buys the land, there are obligations that they have to follow and requirements to keep the property open. We do inspections, so we'll get into that aspect, because oftentimes our inspectors will find compliance issues, or they'll find encroachments. And now we're going back to the local governments to say, you have a problem with your Green Acres funded park, and you need to rectify the situation. So I don't know if but we certainly can go back and ask the person who is the stewardship manager for Morris County.
Okay, I mean, I thought it was a very reasonable decision. It wasn't a politically targeted question, it was just more trying to find out. And then my other question was, you talked about Blue Acres funding, which, can you just elaborate a little bit about what Blue Acres is? Because I think my understanding might be very limited. Right now, I'm thinking that it's mainly for flood mitigation. Is that no?
No.
So can you just explain what Blue Acres is?
So especially after Superstorm Sandy, we applied for a lot of funding to the federal government. And because they had funds for acquisitions to buy out properties. So the whole idea of the Blue Acres program is to look at these very serious flooded areas where there were neighborhoods like the Manville. We did a lot in Raritan Bay. And we also did in the Safe River Basin as well, before Superstorm Sandy. And so working with the local governments, landowners who wanted to sell their land to the state and have the ability to move to higher ground, that's what that funding is for. So get them out of harm's way. The property gets acquired, it's owned by the state, it's deed restricted forever, no structures.
Okay.
And those are pretty specific as compared to other Green Acres funded lands.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? So you said there's no structures on the lake?
Well, the whole idea, when we buy lands on the Blue Acres Program, we're acquiring a property with the structure.
And then you're raising it.
We are.
Okay, okay, I want
The state pays for the land, the state pays for the demolition. And
to, is there funding still available for that?
Well, there is state acquisition funds and we just did some state acquisition funds down on the right of the street in Burlington County. That was just state acquisition funds. But for the most part, they have been federal funds matching with our state funds and coordinating it with the local governments. The local governments manage it, we enter into an agreement, and the state holds title to the land. Now, those lands have federal easements, state restrictions. They can do certain things, they can do restoration. And there's actually some federal money for restoration of those lands. So they're floodplain, the floodplain is brought back, with the flood waters.
Thank you.
Yes.
I have 3 questions. I'm not sure, I know we're maybe short on time. We only have until 7, we can just go. Okay. 3 questions in no orders, in no particular order of importance. You mentioned Green Acres funding for playgrounds, fields, yada yada. Is there any Green Acres funding for passive use? In other words, just to leave it as pristine forest type areas?
Oh, absolutely. The funds are for all of that.
So passive as well as active?
Passive and active.
Just as long as it has public access?
Yes, there must be public access. Okay. And it's public access for all, not just for the residents in that community.
That's correct. Okay, but that's important.
So what's important to know about that is it's the local government or the nonprofits' decisions like, okay, are they buying it for preservation of those really important resources, or are they buying it to make the recreational fields or playgrounds, things like that.
Okay, good, got it. On a previous slide, you had an eligibility, the term dense or highly populated towns. This being the suburbs, I mean, what about areas of towns that are densely populated as opposed to other parts of town? Is there any consideration given for that, or is it the whole town taken?
I think the population density is actually based on figures from the Department of Community Affairs, and so that classification is municipality wide.
Okay, yeah. So not just one particular area of town.
Right. No.
Go ahead.
And I think to bring a list of the towns, there's a lot of densely populated towns, and I think there are some up here in Morris.
Yes,
Morris for sure.
In Morris Township, we have one area of our town that's densely populated.
We just had a brand new program this year called the Urban Park Program, and that is funding that what came from the legislature, and it was open to municipalities with overburdened communities, and that is a whole new high priority that we're within the department and also within our program. And for municipalities that have sections of their towns that are overburdened, then they're going to get a higher priority when we're going to look through and prioritize these grants and rank them. Because the whole idea is to bring green space and parks to these densely populated areas.
Perfect segue into my last question. What about park rehabilitation? So if it's an existing park and it needs rehabilitation, so it's not a new acquisition.
It's coming up on the slides.
Right.
I know, we'll have that. So the important things I just want to say real quickly. When a local government takes our funding, they have to, and actually this will come up a little bit later too, but we require the local government to prepare a recreation and open space inventory called the ROSI. We'll talk about that later. That's how we know that property is preserved, and all of the other parks that local government holds even if it's unfunded parkland, it all gets protected by our rules and regulations when they take a penny of our money. And then nonprofits, if we don't require a ROSI from nonprofits. What we would do is we provide funding, they buy a property, then they give the state a deed restriction. And that's of that property. So it's a deed of conservation restriction on that property. Because a lot of nonprofits don't have, you know, a lot of land. Some have a small amount, some have a lot of lands, but we can't tie all of their lands. We tie the property that is getting our funding. Yes.
All right, not to stretch out the meeting too long, but I have a couple of questions if I may also.
Sure.
Of the 5.58 million acres of New Jersey, how many acres have you purchased?
We're putting this on the spot.
I want to say it's somewhere around a third of the state is preserved. I forget the exact figure.
A third, the most densely populated state in America. That's amazing.
Our mission is to get some more before it's all developed.
So does the Green Acres purchase swampland as otherwise not developable?
You know, yes, because some municipalities and local governments see that wetlands have habitat value, floodplain value. So we do acquire, I mean, on the state acquisition side, we do, sometimes they become an addition to a park or usually a wildlife management area. If it's connected into a wetland next to a stream corridor. And some local governments might also want that buffer. But we appraise that, and you know, that doesn't have a lot of value. And sometimes we also have a donation program. Landowners donate their lands. And that goes through a review process to see if the state agencies have an interest in the property.
And one last thing, you mentioned, what is land justice?
Environmental justice?
Environmental justice, can you explain that, please? Well, it's somebody point to it. So.
Typically, populations that are hurting from factories or, you know, runoff. The ones who are not the ones causing the problems are the ones hurting the most from the problem. So, like in our urban areas, a lot of like lower income communities have bad air quality, you know, water quality. So congestion, air pollution. So the focus is to try and alleviate that burden.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, the idea is to provide, to look at where are these overburdened communities and to provide that environmental justice to help people have a better quality of life. So maybe the state gets more involved in in the permits that the state provides, DEP. You know, you have land use permits, wetland permits, waterfront development permits. They're going to be looking more at these questions. Well, who lives in these communities? How are they affected by this particular development that may get cited? So these are things that we're looking at. And it is a priority of our department.
Yeah.
So the
environmental justice office is getting bigger.
Yeah.
Take on a lot.
Yeah, if you go and you Google DEP, environmental justice, there's a lot to learn about. Okay, so, okay, let me move on because I know you have a meeting.
Okay, so if local governments or nonprofits are looking to acquire land, we have some basic questions.
Yeah.
Basic needs, what does it cost, who owns it, what are you buying it for? And then, you know, local governments, the towns or the county, get a separation of encumbrance, and nonprofits can get a deed of conservation restriction. Eligible costs, aside from the land itself, we also can do whether 25% or 50% or 75%, depending on which grant you have, to go towards your soft costs, survey, the appraisal, demo. Relocation is not something I've seen on the Green Acres side. It's all willing seller, so there wouldn't be any relocation.
Okay, so we'll move on to park development.
So this is land that the local government already owns or has a long-term lease for. And this is where you have those fields or basketball courts. It has to be something for outdoor recreation, not an indoor swimming pool. And it can be some structures that support outdoor recreation, like a shed for, you know, equipment and that kind of thing. The very late, the significant progress in other projects, these are for local governments who have applied over and over and received our funding. We're not going to award new funding if there hasn't been significant progress on funding that they already have. So we want them to spend it, nonprofits and local governments. We want them to spend their money. We don't want the money lingering out there. Additional costs for development projects, construction, preliminary assessment, PAR, plans, incidentals, like title, all that, current fees. So these are all eligible reimbursement for us, which really does help. You know, it's all part of the acquisition or park development project. Oh, let's go back to the watershed. So this is the Whippany River watershed. We've highlighted all the open space in the area, whether it's state-owned, local government, nonprofit, and it also includes things that have received grant acres funding and those that haven't. Some towns already had preserved open space before we even existed. I don't believe there's too much state land in this area. We haven't had a lot of not a lot of applicants. Morris County has been very proactive in acquiring land. So I think they get the bulk of things. Since we looked at your map, Allison, on the web page, and we thought, oh well, let's see where are the preserved lands within the watershed.
This is great. And
I actually thought we might be able to have a paper copy that we wanted to leave with you, but we will get it to you. Our GIS person did this for us, so we weren't able to get the hard copy. So we will get that to you. But it's nice. I know for our office, when we look at our maps, a lot of times we try to see, well, are there connections? Are there greenway connections between these open space lands? Especially if you are just concentrating within your own community, whether it's Whippany or Morris Township. Morris Township has a lot of preserved lands, right? Beautiful, beautiful.
This is one of them. You're standing in it.
Sure are. Sure are. And then the next thing we did, the history of our funding.
This is a great slide.
This is watershed. So what's important to know here is this is the amount of funds that Green Acres has given to local governments since the beginning, 1961. And it includes acquisition and park development projects. So what's not here is the funding we've given to Morris County, and that's around 25 million, but that's for the whole county. So we couldn't figure out, well, how much in the watershed did Morris County?
Well, we talked about this when we spoke, right, was, if I may just interject a thought, because one of the things that's crossing my mind as I'm listening to your presentation is, well, how can we get a slice of the pie, right? As a watershed group, where we know some pieces are flooding, some areas are degraded, and so what have you. So it's interesting because when you said in the beginning, the criteria, you have to be a 501c3, which we are, and you have to have an interest in your bylaws that you actually buy or own land. In our bylaws, we are the stewards of the watershed. Our mission is to preserve, protect, maintain the land and water resources of the watershed. We were created by enabling legislation by the DEP 21 years ago. So I don't know exactly if that qualifies, but if there's areas that are flooding, that we know that are flooding in the watershed, wouldn't that by definition qualify
I think
for us to be able to purchase that land?
I'm not sure, because I think your bylaws, unless you update them, and I can take that question back to our Deputy Attorney General. You may have to have a legal interest in that land. Now,
Does floodplain, is that legal if an area always floods?
well, I'm talking about the property interest, that floodplain might, who owns that land? Is it, Joe Smith? So you would be able to, if you wanted to buy that property from Joe Smith, now you are an owner of that land. So do your bylaws allow you to do that? That's the nitty-gritty question. And I actually had a nonprofit that didn't have that in their bylaws, but they got together, they met, and they changed their bylaws because they now decided, no, we want to also own land and manage it.
Yeah, the Stony Brook Mill.
Watershed Institute.
Right, now the Watershed Institute.
I know, Stony Brook Millstone Watershed Association.
I mean, I don't know how many acres that is, but, and maybe that's way beyond our scope right now is owning a facility, but it's a beautifully piece of preserved land. And it speaks volumes of the organization.
Their bylaws, they buy land and they own it. I work with them, Jim Walton and Mike Soro.
Yeah, I think one of the things I would like to do for WOWAC, if the board, at the pleasure of the board, is probably meet with you guys offline and really pick your brains, and maybe someone from Blue Acres, and really try to develop and cultivate I know we've talked a few times, and you are, Renee, a wealth of knowledge on all of this, but I would like to maybe develop a plan, if we can, for helping a few of the areas in the watershed that I think that we should. I mean, it came up when we removed the container, who actually owns that land, but the container was in the Whippany River. So it was an interesting, we ended up just getting it done, but it does raise the question as who's the steward, but we just did it. And we've always by definition been an action oriented group. That's why our name is Action Committee, right? But it does raise questions as to how big the buffer is and how much it extends, that we would insert our
right.
Group.
I have some ideas about that we can talk about. But one other thing that I also wanted to remind everyone, to let you know, is under the Green Acres programs, local governments can apply for flood-prone areas. It's just a subset. So you're not applying to Blue Acres to buy land. They can use Green Acres funds to acquire a series of properties along the Whippany River, Hanover Township. Sorry, I haven't been up in this area in a while. But so that you can apply for Green Acres funds to do the Blue Acres preservation. That often gets confusing, which I totally understand.
How about that area with the cemetery, where the graves are going into the Whippany River, I guess it is.
Oh, yeah.
The burial grounds.
The burial grounds.
Yeah, the burial ground.
Who owns that land? The cemetery?
I think that's owned by the, well, I've seen it at the Hanover Township Municipal Building, that's Hanover Township, right? Yeah,
In fact, I think what they have now is that along that river stream or whatever, there's a development where I forget the name of the factory that was there. They tore it down. They're putting up housing there, and I believe they donated property from their property to the river to make a park so that they have a walkway from Parsippany Road to the burial ground. So.
Cool. Did they use Green Acres funds to do that?
No, well, I think the,
Oh, it was a donation.
it was a donation, sure, because he wants the tax write-off.
Sure. So this is a relatively new program. It is our stewardship program. It came into being with the enactment of the Preserve New Jersey Act. And now we provide funding for stewardship activities. Nonprofits and local governments can apply for these funds. And it had a specific definition that it's an activity beyond routine operations and maintenance. Undertaken by the state, a local government, or a qualifying nonprofit group to repair or restore lands required for recreation and conservation purposes. For the purpose of enhancing and protecting lands for recreation.
So it can be like a large scale invasive removal, restoration projects, that kind of thing.
So duck lines, grassland bird, removal of invasive species, planting grassland, plants to attract the grassland birds.
Well, just as an aside, the dollar figures we showed before were all for acquisition and development. I don't think anyone in this watershed has taken any stewardship funds, so it's a new thing. Maybe you guys aren't all aware of it yet.
We definitely have to apply. There's consensus along here on this row saying we have to apply.
So, and so I'm just gonna kind of go over and just one quick point I wanna make. It is now a priority. It's a 50% grant. The years past, there's been a minimum project cost of $100,000. There are certain things that cannot be matches, such as administrative operating costs or in-kind volunteer services. Although they're rethinking that in terms of the volunteer services. So because it's new, we're being flexible and trying to understand the needs of the local governments and the nonprofits. Just like with all our funding that we provide to local governments and nonprofits, they have to be compliant with the local public contracts. Yes.
Doesn't having a minimum project cost raise the cost?
There is a reason for that, because there's only so much money.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Why is there a minimum? $100,000 is a lot of money.
Well, we have a lot of applicants who the projects cost a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So, and with that 100,000, you could have 3 different properties, so it doesn't have to be just one site.
Right.
You could have 3 combined to get that.
So what's eligible versus not eligible? So these are examples of what's eligible: landscape restoration, invasive species removal, wildlife habitat restoration. I don't have to read all the slides. Forest, woodland, stream corridor, rain gardens, shoreline restoration, trails, boardwalks, bird lines. We're trying to not say big parking lot areas. If it's something that's really integral to a larger project, then that may qualify. They all get reviewed, by the staff to see if they meet our qualifications. But we also, because we get these questions, this is what we don't even want to ask for. And those are, of course, indoor facilities, plan preparation. We get that question a lot. Can we fund plans? And that's not what the money is. We want the money to be out there on the ground, buying the land, creating that project, or enhancing that natural resource.
What do you mean by large parking areas? Like, you mean for the parking area for the park?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Like if it's a trailhead, which would support a couple of cars, maybe. We don't want to use the stewardship money for that.
Okay.
The park, actually, the stewardship funds come under the park development. It is like a park development project with a specific purpose of stewardship to help local governments and nonprofits maintain their property and enhance it for wildlife management purposes, for public access purposes.
Okay.
So for gun range.
Let's see. Okay, so we're almost done.
Let's go to Randall.
So now, the local governments and the nonprofits have taken our money. What does that mean? What did you get yourselves into? And there's several highlights. We have the local governments take our funding. We require a recreation and open space inventory. There are specific restrictions on the land. There are park maintenance obligations on behalf of the nonprofit and the local governments. And then we have the State House Commission, and that oftentimes there may be a utility company that comes in that needs to go right through that parkland. So there's a process set up in the legislature called the State House Commission. And there's a review process. It's really detailed. We're not from, that's not the bureau that we're part of. And that would be under the Bureau of Legal Services and Stewardship. And they go through a specific process of approving or denying them. So it's really complicated. Our inspections happen every 3 years for funded projects. We inspect the property and we look to make sure it's well maintained, that they have their parkland boundaries are defined, that there aren't any encroachments. All properties that we fund have a green acre sign. And we make sure there aren't any diversions, like the Public Works Department is now suddenly on the open space funded parkland. It has happened. Also, if a local government has a farm lease or other leases with baseball teams, baseball leagues, if it's a funded property, that lease gets reviewed, and we also review the fee schedules, because we want to make sure that they're fair and open to the public, and that's really important too. And then, of course, if they don't correct the issues that we find, then they're in jeopardy of losing the money or any future funding. Because we have to have the carrot and stick, And this is the recreation and open space inventory, which we commonly call ROSI. Other people have called it other things, like Rossi. And it's a list of parcels that the local government holds for outdoor recreation and conservation purposes, whether it's fee or easement. And it's whether it's funded or unfunded. And we have a statewide ROSI project manager. She is fantastic. And if you ever have questions about what's on the inventory for Parsippany, call Nancy Lawrence. She will be right there to help you.
It's also listed on our website. You can search by town for what's on the ROSI.
You have to be careful because it's not illegal.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do.
And so restrictions, when local governments buy land, there is a specific deed restriction that goes into the deed for both the local governments and the nonprofits. And of course, it has to be used for conservation and outdoor recreation purposes. And there must be public access. That's really, really important. And so, if you have questions on development, park development and stewardship, it's Kelly Christopher. Under the Bureau of Legal Services and Stewardship, it's Adam Taylor. And Jamie works up here on acquisitions in Morris County and the entire north, right? When I first came to Green Acres, I was up in, say, Sussex and Warren. And Morris, I did some acquisitions too. Now I'm more in central New Jersey. So we kind of had a lot to talk about, and I feel like we've really condensed. So, but if you have any questions, we're here to help you.
This is great. Thank you very much.
And just this past week, I've been driving around central Jersey, so I've seen your work in action.
Oh, good. Great.
It's all over from Mercer to Ocean County.
Yes.
Thank you for being with us.
Oh, you're welcome.
It was good.
We're very happy to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we move on with the rest of the meeting.
Just turn it off. Yeah.
Just drop the mic.
We have some cuttings of glass outside for parting.
Thank you so much.
Stay around there. Accomplish this.
Well, we might beat the storm.
And have a safe drive back.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll move on to the meeting. Before I start, I just want to let you know, we had a very eventful summer for the Whippany River Watershed. We had our bio blitz in June and in August, if you weren't aware, we finally got the dumpster removed from the Whippany River in Patriots Path in Morristown Township. I was there for 10 years and had a lot of nice publicity, thanks to Allison. And it was removed with no cost to us, but we're very thankful for the people who did. And I posted it on Facebook for a meeting through social media. And there was a really nice, there's a lot of back and forth about how much government should have done and how much things like that. And I just wanted to just point out, government can do so much, but it's really up to us. We're the stewards. And then it's not just with the River Watershed Group, it's really citizens, just like anybody, people here, who let us know about these things and also try to push the local government or the state or the county and just let us know about these things. And it's not, so we can't just depend on government itself. We want people to be proactive in it. And we have a few citizen volunteers right here who have done an admirable job at that. And I just want to now go on. I just wanted to point that out because there's some I think people have some different views of that thing. I just wanted to point that it's not just local government or state government that is dependent on that. It's we have to also be behind that. So moving on. We had, our last meeting was in June 2nd. We had meeting minutes, and I don't know if anybody had seen that. Those who you want to approve the meeting minutes. So I want to move, is there a motion?
There's a motion.
Anybody seconded?
I'll second it.
Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? So the meeting minutes have been approved. And we had the treasurer report. Unfortunately, a treasurer could not be here, but thanks to our administrator, the treasurer reports are in the back here. So I will just leave it to you to look through that. It's going to be on the public record. I mean, we do have over $40,000 in the bank, but we did spend some during the course of the year, mostly because of the pilots and things like that. But we also do a lot of fundraising. And we also get monies from local municipalities within the town. So, and then I go to Allison Deed with her facilitator report. Allison.
Okay, thank you, Siva. Again, I just want to thank everybody. It's nice to see people in person. And thank you, Mayor Soriano. You're being humble as you were introducing yourself, but we have an elected official with us tonight, so.
Two.
Oh, I didn't see you here. You're being hidden by.
I'm usually in Bud's shadow because I'm his biggest admirer, so.
Totally hiding your head, so thank you for being with us this evening. I know you have a lot of responsibilities, and so we appreciate you spending time with us.
I'm not known for office.
Yeah. So I guess they left, but I did want to personally thank Glenn Hoagland with the Seeing Eye for being here. And
was really
again,
cool.
it's a partnership, right? Because as a puppy raiser, I feel like I'm kind of home, but we don't have a place to meet physically in person because the library was closed. So this came about as a result of a networking meeting I had with Glenn over a year and a half ago, because he's the new Seeing Eye CEO, and he offered it and I took him up on it. So hopefully we can get back in the library or at some point soon to meet in person, but for now this is wonderful, and we will definitely take this venue and are grateful. The first thing, I'll keep my comments brief. The first thing is the removal of the shipping container. We did get some great press coverage. We were in the Morris newsfeed. Great placement on the front page and then also on the back. So I kind of wish they had the picture with the crane, but the headline is great. Whippany River dumpster is finally a thing of the past. So we did get credit there, and we were on New Jersey 12, and Jen is gonna make this look pretty, which is what she does great, and we will PDF it and put it on our website, along with maybe some select photos of Siva, myself, and the intern. We're very grateful to Kyle Conte Construction, and that whole connection happened as a result of the internship program. So, you know, talk about empowering the youth. We had an intern last year. Really, in short, for those of you who don't know the whole story, her father works for Global Containers. Her father connected us with Kyle Conte Construction, one of his subcontractors, and he was happy to donate his time and services to get this container out. And it took around a day to get it done in terms of planning, total planning and operations. So the probable estimated cost was around $9,300. We got it donated and it was at no cost to the Watershed. So we're very happy that that was. So the second thing I want to mention is we have a very busy fall outreach calendar. We do a number of events. So please, Jen circulated that with the agenda tonight. Please take, if you can, take an hour to help volunteer for one of our outreach events. We have the Hanover Township Day. We have an event in Parsippany, we have an event in Madison, and we are co-partnering with the MCMUA for Morristown on the Festival on the Green. So there's 4 opportunities to get our name out. We have a banner, we have the Watershed Jeopardy game. It's a lot of fun, and it really helps promote the environment and educate people, which is so important. It's really important to educate people. The Watershed Jeopardy game started because the founding facilitator was actually on Jeopardy. He was a Jeopardy champion. So we started this Jeopardy game. Morristown copied us with the Shade Tree Jeopardy. I was really mad about that because they have no connection to Jeopardy. We were on Jeopardy, and it was a whole big thing, but they have their game.
Imitation flattery.
So we have to keep this Jeopardy game going. So please sign up with Jen to volunteer. Just 1 or 2 hours of your time would really help us. Our calendar is underway. We raised about $1,000 last year from this calendar. We have an even better calendar that we are working on and designing, and the intern is taking a real lead in that. So we should have that hopefully on schedule for Thanksgiving. And then last but not least, our fall fundraiser, which I hope you will all attend, is going to be at Pinot's Palette on October 21st, Thursday. And this is a sample of another painting that was done. This is not going to be what we're doing. I just wanted to show you how easy this stuff is to do. Some people are saying, I don't paint. I'm not a painter. It's really not about that. We're going to have it catered. It's going to be fun. It's BYOB. It's at Pinot's Palette, Morristown, October 21st. It is $100 per person, but that's cheap. The Great Swamp is $350. Come on, it's a deal. $44 of that is donation, straight donation, so you can write that off. So we are gonna be painting this picture. It's I couldn't get a bigger one, but you can kind of see it's all going to be guided for us. It's not going to be difficult. It's kind of like paint by numbers. And this whole event was envisioned by our former chair, Larry Gindoff, who's now our vice chair and treasurer. This was an event he really wanted to do. It got postponed because of COVID. We finally have it on the calendar, and I think it'll be a great event. We have 100% board participation that have committed to supporting the event. So almost our costs are paid for at this point, but we really need to fill up the house. So if you can't make a contribution and attend, maybe you could take this beautiful flyer, post it at your nearby coffee shop or in your library. We can send the PDF out too. And I also have some more of these if you can post up, but most importantly for the elected officials here, if you can post this in your town hall and get this out at your meetings, that would be terrific.
Is there a copy of this we can put on our social media?
Yes, I have it. We'll have a PDF.
How many people can attend?
So I think it's around 20 minimum to 40, 36 maximum. So we'd love to fill the room. Don't quote me on those numbers, but it's around there. And we have 5 already, so we're 25% there. It's a BYOB. Again, some people are coming, they can't paint at all, but they're coming to socialize, and it's going to be catered by Encore Catering of East Hanover. And I think it'll be a fun event. So please, and if you want to participate, I think we're still just doing the checks because we don't have the capability. You can make a donation on the website, but I don't know if you can tag it that it's for this event, but you can make a donation, let Jen know that you paid through the website, through PayPal, or you can send a check to our PO box.
Are you set up with Venmo?
We are not set up with any sort of Venmo or Square. It's come up before, but we didn't want to pay the charges. If you want us to bring it up as a board, we as an executive committee, we can. We felt that we had the PayPal on the website, that was enough, and then we did checks. But we're certainly open to suggestions for that. So right now, those are the 2 ways to sign up. Is that good? Does that answer your question?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's all I have. The next meeting will be virtual. We have the Morris Somerset beekeepers, and she has a funny presentation. It's like the birds and the bees, but the G version. So it's a fun presentation she's assured me of, and we are looking forward to that for our next action committee meeting, but it will be virtual, no pizza. Unfortunately, you'll have to get your own at home, but it's great to see everybody in person.
Okay, thanks, Allison. And could talk a little bit about the Education Outreach Committee. I'm also still there, even though the chair. This is where I was originally doing when I joined Warwack. And just recently, I just got something set up with the Madison Girl Scout troop that they asked me to present something about waterways, and because they're I think they're looking into these young women are looking into doing their Girl Scout Gold Award that has to deal with environment and water, and they even took a tour of the Drew University Forest Preserve that they're trying to get preserved, and they're learning more about the watershed and how aquifers are made and things like that. And I'm just going to talk a little bit more about that through the presentation that I do, and also talk. I think I have to modify it because of the whole summer, golden summer that we had. But that's part of what we do. We try to do an outreach to schools, to young people, and also municipalities and other places like that. I speak to Rotaries. So anybody anyone else need to have us to know more about the watershed, just contact us and we'll set somebody up to talk to you about it. And one of our volunteers from Madison, Jason Leffler, is here to talk about Cocoa Ross. And Jason, you want to take a few minutes to talk about this?
Sure. I've been a member of Cocoa Ross now for about 8 years, 9, and simply say Cocoa Ross is a 100% volunteer organization established in 1998, and it's 22 years about. They started in Colorado as a result to a flood that over a course of just a few blocks, it went from virtually zero accumulation to over 6 inches of rain. So it's a huge difference. Is really valuable. And the reason why I'm bringing this to our attention, obviously, because we are the Whippany River watershed. And basically the only thing you need to do to become a member is to basically register your property. And that's just so that they have how high you are from sea level, and the purpose is just to help inform downstream of flooding water potential, total accumulation of water. Cocoa Ross is collaborative community hail, rain, and snow, and it's a measurement of precipitation. That is all those things, including ice, and it's 24/365. The program itself is the only cost is like $35 for the rain gauge. It's an official rain gauge, 4 inches in diameter. You set it up somewhere on your property that's unobstructed from either roof or tree or anything. And the purpose is so you get an accurate measurement of rainfall on your property. And then at 7 o'clock, at 7 o'clock, you have a 24-hour report time at 7 a.m. typically. If you need to report at 6 a.m. because you're going to work at 7, that's fine. It's a very diverse and program that allows you to document your catch over a 24-hour period of time. So if 5:30 or 4 o'clock in the morning you need to do this, then you can do so. Or when I first started, it was 11 o'clock at night. I was doing it because I wanted to be a 24-hour representation, but I realized that it didn't matter, so I changed my report time to 7 a.m. And again, it's you go outside in the snow. You put the cylinder, the 4-inch outer cylinder into the snow. You get an account, you melt that down, and it gives you a water content. And there are all kinds of videos. I copied one to this organization for you to review. And it's a really simple thing to do. I'm happy to volunteer my time to help you put up a gauge on your property. Right now, there's about 115 registered Cocoa Ross observers just in Morris County. Now, does that mean that there's 115 active? No, a lot of people move. So, for instance, I'm 59. If I move tomorrow, I become 116. And so a lot of people that are active reporters were previously active reporters. So Cocoa, New Jersey MS, which is Morris County, #1, probably moved once or twice. And if they moved within Morris County, then there'd be another number down the line. But it's a really simple process, and it is very valuable information. And I've been recording precipitation now over 8 years, and it's very helpful. Plus, also you become part of history, in that your information is shared with the national weather groups, and it becomes part of historical. It becomes a historical record in the United States. It's also international, Canada, the Virgin Islands, and as far north as Alaska. So they're all over the place. It's a great organization. I have some pamphlets that people are welcome to take if you're interested. or you can, private message me and I will provide you links to that organization as well.
It's very interesting because after the rain we had, Jason would text me and we would talk and he would have these statistics like, Chatham had 7 inches, Madison had 6 inches over 6 hours.
Less than 6 hours.
Less than,
which is a record.
this is the wettest summer in 7 years. So if we're writing press releases or I'm talking to the media or I'm trying to kind of sell the importance of flood mitigation and of land use and proper land use, really helps to have this kind of data at your fingertips. So it's very influential and impactful. So our vision was to get like a town leader in every town to help with this. So we talked about having a town leader and everything, but right now we're trying to get just town representation from every town just to come to the meetings and pay their dues. So before we start throwing out more volunteer tasks, we really want to see dues paying members first and people come. But it's a vision because it's very interesting, especially since we're having more frequent storms and more flooding, and so it seemed like a great program. We can send out links to everybody so you can see the videos that they put together and how the information's used. So we can certainly do that if you're interested.
Thanks, Trace.
Thank you.
And we have an upcoming event calendar on September 18th, we have Hanover Day. And we were looking for volunteers for the table. I think Jennifer has, what is it, Survey Monkey or
Putting together some sign up genius.
Yeah.
And I'll be putting it out over Constant Contact, so you can go in and choose a slot to work a table. We try to have 2 people per hour at a table, no more than an hour at a time.
And she also put in time to build up and also take down before and after the event. And October 2nd in Madison has Bottle Hill Day. And I think Jason signed up. I know I signed up. And we're looking for more volunteers for that. And Morristown has the Fall Festival the following day, October 3rd. We're disappointed that Parsippany couldn't get it. I'm sure our Parsippany contingent is even more disappointed by that. But there is, I think, you have some other groups, I think, in October, didn't you have the?
Yeah, we couldn't have the Fall Festival this year, but we're having a green fair. And so that will be at the end. I'm a little mixed up with the dates because we have 2 things going on. We have a Batapalooza, we're calling it at the library, and we're also going to have it's awareness about bats, the importance of bats, and everything. And we have some people who can come. So let me pass that information on to you because I've kind of been busy with other things, and I haven't been on those calls recently. So they just set up a whole bunch of tables. They're going to have it at the library on Halsey Road. What's the date? I think that's it's either October 23rd is one date and October 31st is the other, but I'm not sure which is.
October 31st is the Bat Palooza to hit the Halloween theme, I think.
Yeah, that was cute. Yeah. What a cute idea.
We're very cute in Parsippany.
Very cute.
October 23rd.
I'll get you those tonight or tomorrow.
Yeah, I think October 23rd is the.
That's what we've been saying we would do.
And I know we have a table.
The Green Fair? Okay.
Lynn Sipkin.
That's like a great, kind of like what you guys did at the Bio Branch. We'll have just different people presenting at a table, like you would at the Fall Festival. At a Fall Festival, and you could.
So Lynn Sipkin, our previous chair, he had given us a table for Warwack at the Green Festival on October 23rd, and again, we're going to look for volunteers for that. But I think we'll talk more about that at the next executive committee meeting in October. I mean, actually, committee in October 6th. But so we'll look for volunteers in that one. And I think, again, we're a very volunteer-heavy organization. And so then you can look at the agenda for upcoming meetings. And now I open it to everybody else for comments. So anybody want to talk? For one thing, we're in hurricane season, and this past week, we've seen the heavy rainfall, and we're going to get some heavy rainfall right this evening. Because it is something that we are very concerned about. Ida was supposed to be the end of a hurricane. We didn't expect it to be the heavy rainfall that we'd had, and there was flooding here. It wasn't as bad as other places, but it was still.
But the deaths, that was the main thing. The deaths, the state of emergency were shocking, and I think what's so sad is that some of these deaths could have been prevented.
Right.
And that's what's so disappointing, but along the lines of flooding, it wasn't just the article on the front page. We actually got an article on the back page about, the headline was River Committee. I wish they put our name again, but they put River Committee wants better communication. And it was about the development in Morristown that was approved in a floodplain, in a known floodplain. And they didn't even notice the immediate neighborhood. The pastor across the street in an area that floods, which we've been working with now for over 10 years. Right. So Siva and I have a meeting with the mayor next week to discuss. I don't know if that meeting will lead into anything. I'm not really quite sure, other than we wanted to introduce Siva to him as the new chair. But I'm being told that just like we learned tonight, a lot of the money is now federal through our Congresswoman, Mikey Sherrill. Right. So we really want to see if we can get money. Now, again, we're active in Morristown. I know that there's lots of other towns that have projects. Again, let us know your needs and we will try to represent you. But this came about because of seeing it on the planning board docket, Siva contacting me and us. And so we wrote this press release over a weekend. They printed it in both Morristown Green and Newsbee. And we do want to try to prevent this development. What I learned from talking with Pastor Williams was that this is not a new issue. This has been coming on for 10 years. And when he met with Art Vespignani, my predecessor, they had a 4-phase plan, and Steve Sousa from Princeton Hydro to address this. And that plan was tossed aside. So our strategy for the meeting is to reintroduce that plan. I did some digging, found in my files the Great Morristown Greenway. So we have the information. Those of you on that side of the aisle can text Mandela and tell them we're prepared. We've done our homework, and we would really like to see the first phase 1 and phase 2 of that plan get appropriated. We can't request the funds without town support. The town has to approve it. So what we want to do is turn that whole Oxbow area into a rain garden or a flood mitigation with a stream bank plan, so that when that area floods, it will help. And so hopefully we'll learn more from our meeting with Pastor Williams tomorrow about what the original plan said. And then when we meet with the mayor next week, we can have. Are you meeting with Mayor Doherty? With his, okay, who am I? Siva and I, and next week with the mayor, tomorrow morning with Pastor Williams. So hopefully we can get that project, but there's other projects in our 14 towns, as you see, are in the watershed, and there's a lot of work to do. I found this, it's called the Great Morristown Greenway, but it really includes the Greenway all the way from Speedwell Avenue to Hanover. So it's apparently it never got built, but it needs to get built. This needs to get done. So, and we've got to do it right here in Warlack. So I'm gonna copy this and share it with you. It's starts at Speedwell Lake Dam and goes all the way to the Freeling-Heisen Arboretum and Morris County Library where we meet. And we can do this.
The question, with this past tropical depression, was there flooding in that place where they're building right now?
Exactly, and Siva took
pictures.
a ton of pictures. There was 4 feet of flooding right where they want to build this development. Now, she talked about tonight some kind of transferring, right, of housing rights. Like you could take that development and go move it elsewhere and buy that land and preserve it. That's what I think we need to do for that whole stream, for that river. So, I mean, it's that
We have
history of
issues
flooding.
like that on the Rockaway part near in Parsippany too, with properties that a mayor 2 decades ago, I guess maybe less, a decade and a half ago, wanted to do just that, like,
Flood mitigation,
Yeah, flood mitigation. And
That's just.
Where
in
is
Lake
that?
Hiawatha, part of Parsippany.
Lake
It's the
Hiawatha.
Rockaway.
River Road.
So is that near Beverick Road? Is that?
Close enough.
It's just, yeah.
Okay, but River Road, well,
Yeah.
and that's the Rockaway,
Yeah,
not.
no, but it's all the same, it's, you know.
Well,
it's
we
all
go into the Rockaway,
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
Rockaway flows into.
Rockaway flows into us.
No, Rockaway
No.
flows into splits.
Okay, it's getting late, that's good. That's all right.
Okay, is there anybody else have comments?
So I think we need to add this to our list for new business.
Yeah.
For the executive committee.
That's
These items, these municipal projects and Coco Ross.
Right.
So thank you all again.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
It's great to be in person. I do think things get done better in person. I do.
Right.
And I like Zoom, but I'm zoomed out. I am zoomed out. I'll forward you those dates.
Okay, thanks.
When
And
I
have
get-
to look for volunteers on our end.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I can't just like say anything right now because we have a lot of events coming
I
up.
know.
Oh, yeah.
So, but I'll check my calendar.
So without further ado, any call to adjourn the meeting? Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.
All right.
So I, there was a sign up.